had seen many species prepare for war, the polish their armor until it shone, the sang death hymns that lasted for hours, the spent days in meditation, clearing their minds of all emotion before battle. Humans did none of these things. The diplomatic observer stood in the hangar bay of the human warship Defiant, watching the soldiers with growing confusion. They sat in clusters on the metal floor, eating something they called rations from silver packets. They laughed. They showed each other pictures on small screens. One group was throwing a ball back and forth, shouting and cheering when someone caught it. This was not how warriors behaved. 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he adjusted his recording device. The Galactic Coalition had sent him here to document human military capabilities. After the humans had volunteered to defend Prime, the Council wanted to know what made these newcomers different. 12 other species had already abandoned the colony world. The Dominion swarm was coming, and everyone knew that meant death. Everyone except the humans, apparently. "Observer," a voice spoke behind him. He turned to see a human in a dark blue uniform. The man was tall by human standards, with black hair cut very short and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His uniform bore symbols that's translator identified as high rank. "I am Commander," the human said, extending his hand. Knew about this ritual. He reached out one of his 3-fingered hands and let the human grip it briefly. The gesture was called a handshake, though found it strange. Why touch a stranger on purpose? "The Council sent me to observe your tactics," said. His translator device turned his clicking language into human words. "I will stay out of your way." "You're welcome on my ship," said. His face showed something that might have been amusement. "Though I have to warn you, we do things a little differently than most coalition forces." "I have noticed," said, gesturing at the soldiers playing with the ball. "Your warriors seem very relaxed." "They're scared," said simply. "Most of them have never fought the swarm before. Some have never fought at all, so they stay close to each other. It helps." Did not understand, but he nodded anyway. Let him through the ship. It was smaller than coalition vessels, more cramped. Everything looked functional but worn, as if it had been used hard and repaired many times. They passed through corridors where humans worked at computer stations or carried equipment. Many of them stopped to greet, and he responded to each one by name. "How many soldiers do you have?" asked. "On this ship, 200 Marines, 50 crew," said. "In the whole fleet defending Prime, about 12,000. "And the swarm?" "Intelligence says 2 million, maybe more." Stopped walking. His translator must have malfunctioned. 2 million. You cannot fight 2 million with 12,000. "Probably not," agreed. He kept walking. "But there are 8 million on the planet's surface. Civilians, families. If we don't fight, they all die." "They are not your species," said, hurrying to catch up. "You have no treaty obligation. The Coalition has authorized evacuation for non-essential personnel." "The Coalition can authorize whatever it wants," said. There was something hard in his voice now. "We don't leave people behind." They entered a large room where more soldiers had gathered. At the front stood a woman with a scar running down her left cheek. She was shorter than but seemed to take up more space somehow. Her uniform was different, marked with symbols for ground forces. "This is Captain," said. "She leads our Marines." Looked at with sharp eyes. "An observer, great, someone to watch us die," said, his voice carrying a warning. "It's fine, Commander," she said, but her tone suggested it was not fine at all. She turned to address the soldiers. "Listen up. We get drop authorization in 6 hours. The swarm is already in orbit on the dark side of the planet. Long-range sensors show their landing ships beginning descent." The room fell quiet. Could sense fear in the air, though he did not know how. Perhaps it was the way the humans' bodies tensed or how their breathing changed. "We're going in fast and hot," continued. "Primary objective is the capital city. 2 million civilians are trapped there. We extract as many as possible and hold the evacuation points until the last transport lifts off." "What if the swarm reaches the city first?" someone asked. "Then we kill them," said. "Any other questions?" No one spoke. "Good, check your gear, check your squad mates, and get some rest." Dismissed. The soldiers filed out quietly, watched them go, nodding how they touched each other's shoulders in passing, how they stayed in their small groups even as they left. "Your captain is very direct," said two. "She's the best we have," replied. "And she's right to be angry. This is a bad situation." "Then why do you stay?" Could not stop himself from asking. "Your people could leave. The coalition would not blame you. The Dominion swarm has never been defeated in open battle." Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "My species spent hundreds of thousands of years learning to survive on a world that wanted to kill us. We learned to work together to protect each other because alone we died. We're not the strongest species or the fastest or the—" he looked directly at, "but we're very, very stubborn. And when someone needs help, we help. It's who we are. Even if it means your own death." "Especially then," said. Made a note in his recording device, though he was not sure what to write. The humans made no logical sense. They were choosing almost certain death over survival. They were risking everything for aliens they had never met. Later stood in the observation deck and watched space. The swarm fleet was visible now as a dark cloud against the stars, blocking out the light. So many ships, too many to count. Behind him he heard human voices singing. The sound was rough and unpolished, nothing like hymns, but there was something in it that made his skin prickle. Not fear exactly, something else. In the reflection of the window, he saw standing at the doorway. "They always sing before a fight," she said. "Old songs from Earth. Most of them don't even know what the words mean anymore." "Why do they sing if they don't understand?" asked. "Because their ancestors sang them," said. "Because it reminds them they're not alone." She paused. "Because it pisses off the enemy." She smiled and saw that it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator. "Get some rest, observer," she said. "Tomorrow you'll see why the galaxy should fear us." Then she was gone, and was alone with his thoughts and the approaching darkness of the swarm. The alarm started screaming at 400 hours. Jerked awake in his quarters, his heart's hammering in his chest. Red lights flashed in the darkness. Through the walls, he heard the thunder of boots as humans ran to their stations. He grabbed his recording device and stumbled into the corridor. Soldiers rushed past him, pulling on armor and checking weapons as they moved. No one looked panicked. They looked focused. "All hands to battle stations," a voice said over the speakers. Recognized it as Lieutenant, the communications officer he had met the day before. Her voice was calm, almost cheerful. "The swarm has entered weapons range. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Made his way to the bridge. The doors opened to reveal organized chaos. Humans sat at stations covered in screens and buttons, their fingers moving rapidly. Commander stood in the center, arms crossed, watching the main display. The screen showed space filled with ships. The human fleet was small, maybe 40 vessels. The swarm fleet was a nightmare. Hundreds of organic-looking ships, all teeth and claws and poolsing flesh. They moved together like a school of fish, like a single living thing. Because they were a single living thing. The Dominion swarm was a hive mind, millions of bodies controlled by one consciousness. They did not negotiate. They did not retreat. They consumed everything in their path. "How many?" asked quietly. "Computer counts 427 capital ships," someone replied. "Smaller craft are too numerous to count accurately." 400 against 40, felt his legs weaken. "Send the signal," said. "All ships defensive formation Beta 7, carriers to the rear. Launch all fighters." On the screen, the human fleet began to move. The ships spread out, forming a wall between the swarm and the planet below. They're adapting already, said from her station. Swarm is splitting into 3 groups. Looks like they're trying to flank us. Let them try, said. Weapons, I want firing solutions on their command ships, the big ones in the center. Sir, the command ships are protected by at least 50 smaller vessels each, the weapons officer said. I know, replied. The first swarm ships opened fire. Beams of green energy lanced across space. The human fleet's shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. Then the humans fired back. It was like watching a light show. Energy weapons, missiles, and what appeared to be solid metal projectiles filled the space between the fleets. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. Could not tell who was winning. Destroyer Courage reports shield failure, said. They're pulling back. Tell them negative, said. Hold formation. Sir, they'll be destroyed. If we break formation, we all die faster. Hold the line. On the screen, watched the Courage continue firing even as swarm ships tore into its hull. Then it exploded in a ball of white light. Courage is gone, someone said quietly. Space showed nothing. Noted, continue firing. More ships died. Human ships mostly. The swarm lost vessels too, but they had so many more. For every swarm ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. This is insane, whispered. You cannot win this. Heard him, she turned from her station, and to his shock she was smiling. Probably not, but we're going to try anyway. Then she opened a channel. All ships, this is defiant communications. Time to wake them up. Music began playing over every speaker. Loud, pounding music with drums and guitars. It made no tactical sense. It served no purpose. The humans started fighting harder. Fighter Wing Alpha, you're clear for attack run, said over the music. Good hunting. Copy that, a voice crackled back. Time to dance with the devil. Watched as a group of small human fighters broke from formation. They were tiny compared to the swarm capital ships, like insects against giants. They dove straight into the enemy fleet. The lead fighter moved like nothing had ever seen. It twisted and spun, dodging fire that should have destroyed it. The pilot must have been pulling gravitational forces that would kill most species. The fighter fired missiles into the gaps between swarm ships, causing chain explosions. Showing off again, someone muttered. Let him, said. If we're going to die, might as well make it interesting. The fighter's fighter suddenly accelerated directly at a swarm command ship, realized what was about to happen. He's going to crash into it, said. No, replied. Watch. At the last possible second, fighter fired all its remaining missiles and dove beneath the command ship. The missiles struck the ship's underside, where its armor was weakest. The entire vessel shuddered. Now, said quietly. Every human ship focused fire on the damaged command ship. It took maybe 10 seconds before the massive vessel exploded from the inside out. The swarm fleet hesitated, just for a moment, but saw it. Their perfect coordination broke. They're confused, said, sounding delighted. The command ship controlled that sector. They're trying to reconnect to the hive mind. Hit them while they're thinking, ordered. All weapons, maximum rate of fire. The human fleet unleashed everything. The confused swarm section fell apart under the assault. Dozens of ships destroyed in seconds. But the rest of the swarm adapted. They changed tactics, became more aggressive. They stopped trying to outmaneuver the humans and simply pushed forward through sheer numbers. Shields at 40%, someone reported. 30%. 20%. Hull breaches on decks 5 and 7. His expression never changed. Seal the breaches. Redirect power from life support to shields. Sir, people are in those sections. Then they need to get out. Do it. More alarms, more damage reports. The humans kept fighting. They adapted their tactics constantly, trying new approaches when old ones failed. The swarm had numbers, but the humans had something else. They could think independently. They could improvise. watched a human frigate ram a swarm vessel twice its size, destroying both ships. He watched human crews work damaged weapons with their bare hands when the computers failed. He watched them keep fighting when any sane species would have surrendered. "Ground forces away," announced. "All troop carriers have launched." On the screen, small transport ships dropped from the human carriers toward the planet. The swarm moved to intercept them. "All ships protect those transports," ordered. "They are priority one." The human fleet shifted, putting themselves between the swarm and the descending transports. More ships died, but the transports kept going. Understood then. This whole battle was not about winning. It was about buying time, time for the Marines to reach the surface, time to save the humans were sacrificing themselves so others could live. "Swarm is breaking off," the sensors officer said, surprise in her voice. They're moving to pursue the transports." "Good," said. "That means and her people have their attention." "It also means we completed our objective," added. She looked exhausted but satisfied. "What was your objective?" asked. Turned to him. Blood ran down the side of his face from a cut had not noticed before. "To not die in the first 5 minutes. We lasted 3 hours. I'll take that as a win." The bridge crew laughed. They actually laughed, standing in their damaged ship surrounded by debris and death. Made notes in his recording device with shaking hands. The humans had lost 15 ships, almost 40% of their fleet. They had killed maybe 100 swarm vessels. And they were celebrating. Observer said, "I hope you're ready for the next part." "What is the next part?" "We go down there," pointed at the planet on the screen, "and we help fight the real battle." Looked at the planet, where millions of swarm creatures were now landing, where the humans would be outnumbered 100 to 1. "This is madness," he whispered. "Yes," agreed, "but it's our kind of madness." The transport shook like it was being torn apart. Gripped his seat with all 3 hands as the ship dropped through the atmosphere. Around him, human Marines sat calmly in their armor, weapons across their laps. Some had their eyes closed. One was humming. 30 seconds to drop," the pilot announced. Captain stood at the front of the transport, one hand on the ceiling for balance. She had painted something on her face armor, symbols that translator could not read. "Listen up," she shouted over the noise. "The LZ is hot. We're landing right in the middle of the city, right in the middle of the swarm. The moment these doors open, you start shooting. We push forward to the evacuation points, we get the civilians out, and we don't stop until everyone is safe or we're dead. Clear." "Clear, ma'am," the Marines shouted back. The transport hit the ground hard. The doors blew open and hell poured in. Saw swarm creatures for the first time up close. They were nightmares made flesh, each one the size of a small vehicle. Too many legs, too many teeth, covered in black chitin that seemed to absorb light. They moved fast, so impossibly fast. The Marines moved faster. They poured out of the transport firing. Energy weapons, projectile weapons, explosives. The sound was deafening. Swarm creatures fell, but more came. Always more. "Move, move, move," screamed. "Woo, I need that building down now." A Marine carrying what looked like a heavy tube aimed it at a structure to their left. Realized with horror that the building was covered in swarm creatures. The Marine, Woo, fired. The rocket hit the building's base, and the entire structure collapsed, crushing dozens of creatures beneath it. Woo laughed. "That's what I'm talking about." "You're insane," another Marine shouted. "That's why they pay me the big money," Woo replied, already loading another rocket. Stumbled out of the transport. He had been given a weapon, though he did not know how to use it. A human grabbed his arm and pulled him behind a piece of rubble. "Stay low, observer," the Marine said. It was a young woman, barely out of adolescence by human standards. Her name tag read. "This is madness," said. "You are all going to die." "Probably," agreed. She leaned around the rubble and fired at something could not see. But we're taking a lot of them with us. The battle moved through the city streets. The Marines fought building by building, street by street. They used the rubble for cover, set ambushes in alleys, turned the urban terrain into a weapon. Saw a Marine get grabbed by a swarm creature. Before he could scream, 3 other Marines killed the creature and pulled their comrade free. The injured Marine's armor was torn, but he just switched his weapon to his other hand and kept fighting. They found the first group of civilians huddled in a basement, 30 of them, mostly children. They were terrified. Medic called, "We need Sara here." A human ran up, no weapon in sight, just bags marked with red symbols. Sara knelt beside a wounded child and began treating the injury with quick, efficient movements. "Why does your medic not carry a weapon?" asked. "Sara doesn't believe in killing," said, "so she saves lives instead. She saved more lives than the rest of us combined." "But she is defenseless." Smiled grimly, "No, she's not, she has us." As if to prove the point, a swarm creature burst through the wall. Marines immediately put themselves between the creature and Sara, killing it before it could reach her. Sara did not even look up from her patient. They moved the civilians to an evacuation point, where transport ships were landing and taking off constantly under heavy fire. Watched climb aboard, watched them escape to safety. "That's 30 down, 700,000 to go," muttered. An explosion knocked off his feet. He landed hard, his recording device skittering across the ground. Something sharp had hit his side. Pain flooded his system. Hands grabbed him, pulled him up. Marines formed a circle around him, firing outward. A swarm creature died mere feet away. "Observers hit," someone shouted. "Get him to Sara," ordered. "Ma'am, we need every gun." "I gave you an order." 2 Marines carried to cover. Sara was already there, treating 3 wounded Marines. She looked at S's wound and immediately began working on it. "Why are you helping me?" gasped. "You need to help your own people." "You're hurt and I can help," Sara said simply. "That's all that matters." Through the pain, watched the battle rage. The humans were being pushed back. There were too many swarm creatures. They were losing ground. A Marine took up position in a narrow corridor. "I'll hold here," he said, his name tag red. "That's suicide," another Marine said. "Yeah, but it's necessary suicide," replied. He smiled. "Someone's got to slow them down. You get those civilians out." Appeared, she looked at the corridor at the hundreds of creatures approaching. "How long can you hold?" 5 minutes, maybe 10 if I'm lucky." Gripped his shoulder. "You better make it 20, that's an order." "Yes, ma'am," said. He settled into position, checking his ammunition. "Hey, tell my sister I finally did something useful, okay?" Nodded once. Then she turned away, shouting orders to move the civilians faster. Wanted to protest. They were leaving behind, but he saw the Marine's face. Was not scared, he looked determined, proud even. The rest of the unit moved forward, herding civilians toward the evacuation point. Behind them, heard S's weapon firing. It did not stop for a long time. They reached an evacuation point where a transport was loading. Families climbed aboard frantically. A swarm creature appeared on a rooftop, preparing to jump down. Wu shot it with a rocket launcher. The creature exploded, raining pieces across the street. "Stay away from my transport," he shouted at the corpse. More civilians loaded. More Marines formed defensive positions. The swarm kept coming. It never stopped. Sara was still treating wounded, moving from human to human again. She worked tirelessly, her hands steady even as explosions shook the ground. A swarm creature broke through the line. It charged straight at a group of children, stepped in front of them and opened fire. Her shots went wild, missing more than hitting. The creature kept coming. Appeared from nowhere and killed the creature with precise shots. She grabbed and shook her. "Get your head together, Marine." "I can't," sobbed. I can't do this, there's too many. Pulled off her helmet, her face was covered in dirt and blood. Look at me, she said. You're scared, good, fear keeps you alive, but those children need you. Those civilians need you, I need you. Can you do this? Took a shaking breath. I don't know. I do, said. You're a Marine, you don't quit, now pick up your weapon. Picked up her weapon. Her hand still shook, but she nodded. Good, said. Stay with the civilians, keep them safe. Watched this from his position, still being treated by Sara. He saw how the humans dealt with fear. They did not ignore it. They acknowledged it, then pushed through it anyway. The transport lifted off, full of civilians, saved, alive, because humans were dying to protect them. His weapon had stopped firing. The silence was terrible. We need to fall back, a Marine said too. We're being surrounded. Looked at the city around them. Swarm creatures were everywhere now, a living tide of teeth and claws. The humans were islands in a dark sea. No, she said, we keep moving forward, more civilians that way. Captain, we'll be cut off. Then we get cut off, said. She raised her voice. Marines, we move forward or we die here. I'd rather die moving. They moved forward, into the swarm, into almost certain death. And moved with them because he had nowhere else to go. Because these insane, stubborn, fierce creatures had made him want to survive, had made him want to fight. For the first time in his life, understood what courage truly meant. 36 hours, that was how long they had been fighting. Could barely stand. His wound had been treated, but exhaustion dragged at his limbs like physical weight. Around him, the human Marines looked worse. Their armor was cracked and stained. Their faces were hollow with fatigue, but they kept moving. They had saved 14,000 civilians. There were still hundreds of thousands more. The Marines had taken shelter in what remained of a government building. Outside, the swarm circled like predators, waiting. Inside, humans tried to rest, to eat, to treat their wounded. Counted the survivors. Had started with 200 Marines. Now there were 73. Observer, commander approached. When had he arrived, could not remember. Can you still record? Checked his device. It was damaged but functional. Yes. Good, said. What you see here needs to be remembered. He gestured around the room. Marines sat against walls, some sleeping where they sat. Medics moved among them. Sara was asleep on the floor, still clutching her medical kit. Someone had covered her with a jacket. We're losing, said. It was not a question. Yes, agreed. He sat down heavily on a piece of rubble. The swarm outnumbers us 50 to 1 now, maybe more. Our ammunition is running low. We've lost contact with 3/4 of the evacuation points. He smiled tiredly. But we're still here. Why, asked. Why do you continue? Because people still need saving, said simply. A sound made them both look up. It was the young Marine. She sat alone in a corner, her weapon across her lap. She was crying silently, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. An older Marine, a woman with gray hair, sat down beside her. She did not say anything, just put an arm around shoulders. I'm sorry, whispered. I'm so sorry, I'm trying to be brave, but I can't. I'm so scared. We're all scared, the older Marine said. Every single one of us. You don't look scared. That's because I've had more practice hiding it, the woman said gently. Fear doesn't make you weak. Giving up makes you weak. You haven't given up. I wanted to, admitted, so many times. But you didn't, that's what matters. Other Marines gathered around. Wu sat down then more. They formed a circle around, not speaking, just being present. Watch this strange ritual. The humans were comforting each other, sharing their fear instead of hiding it. It made no tactical sense, but somehow it seemed to help. Stopped crying. She picked up her weapon and checked it methodically. Okay, she said quietly. I'm okay now. Good, said, because I need every Marine I have. Stood and moved to the center of the room. Marines, gather up. We need to talk. The humans assembled, tired and battered but still disciplined. Joined them. "Here's our situation," said. "The swarm has us surrounded. They control most of the city. We have limited ammunition, limited medical supplies, and limited time." He paused. "Coalition Command has authorized a full retreat. Transport ships are coming to extract us." Silence, then someone spoke up. "What about the civilians?" "Command says we've saved enough. We've done our job." More silence. Could feel something building in the air, a tension like before a storm. "No," said. She stepped forward. "We haven't saved enough. We haven't saved all of them." "Captain, we don't have the resources to save everyone," said. "Then we get more resources. We adapt. We improvise." His voice grew stronger. "We don't leave people to die because some council says it's acceptable losses. When did we start accepting that?" "She's right," Wu said. "We can still fight." "We can barely stand," someone else pointed out. "So we lean on each other," another Marine said. Voices rose, arguing, debating. Listened in amazement. These humans were discussing whether to stay and die or leave and live, and most of them wanted to stay. Held up his hand for quiet. "I want to be clear. If we stay, most of us will not survive. The odds are impossible." "The odds have been impossible since we got here," said. "Hasn't stopped us yet." Looked at his Marines, really looked at them, then he smiled. "You're all completely insane, you know that, right?" "Yes, sir," they chorused. "Good," said. "Because so am I. We stay, we fight, and we save every civilian we can." The Marines cheered. Actually cheered, these exhausted, outnumbered, dying soldiers. They cheered like they had already won. "Now we need a plan," said. "The swarm has numbers, they have this city. What do we have?" "Stubbornness," someone called out. Accurate acknowledged. "What else?" "We know this terrain now," said. "We've been fighting in it for 36 hours. We know which buildings are weak, which streets are defensible." "The swarm is a hive mind," Wu added. "They all think the same, they're predictable." "We're not," another Marine said. "We can adapt, change tactics, they can't." Ideas flowed. The humans planned like they had not planned before, using every advantage they could think of. They would not fight the swarm head-on anymore. They would use guerrilla tactics, hit and run, ambushes, make the enemy's numbers work against them. "We collapse buildings to create," said, pointing at a map. "Force them into kill zones." "We use the sewers to move unseen," someone suggested. "We draw them into the industrial district," Wu said eagerly. "All those chemical plants, one good explosion could take out thousands." The plan came together. It was desperate, it was risky, it probably would not work. The humans decided to try it anyway. They moved out before dawn. Teams split up, each with a specific objective. Stayed with its group. They moved through the dark city, avoiding swarm patrols. "Remember," whispered to her team, "we're not trying to kill all of them, just enough to create a path to the civilians." They set their first ambush in a narrow street. When the swarm patrol entered, Wu detonated explosives that brought down buildings on both sides. The creatures were trapped, crushed. Before more could arrive, the Marines disappeared into the sewers. They emerged behind swarm lines and attacked a creature nest. The swarm had not expected them there. The Marines killed dozens before melting back into the shadows. "It's working," said, breathing hard. "For now," replied. "But the hive mind is learning, they'll adapt." And they did. The next ambush failed. The swarm had guards posted. Marines died, their sacrifices buying seconds for others to escape. But the humans adapted faster. They changed tactics again, finding new ways to strike and fade. They led swarm forces into traps, into areas where their numbers became a liability. Fought alongside them now. He had learned to use his weapon. He had learned to move with the squad, to trust his. When a swarm creature nearly killed him, 3 Marines saved his life without hesitation. They were treating him like one of them. By the time the sun rose again, they had cleared a corridor through the swarm territory. Civilians poured through it toward the evacuation points, guarded by Marines who could barely stand. Stood on a pile of rubble, coordinating everything. His voice was hoarse from shouting orders. Blood soaked through his uniform in a dozen places, but he did not stop. "That's another 1,000 out," he said. "Keep them moving." Climbed up beside him. "You did it, you actually did it." "Not yet," said, "but we're close." He looked at, "Still think we're crazy." "Yes," said, "but I think I understand now. You do not fight because you think you can win. You fight because it is the right thing to do." "Now you're getting it," said. A massive explosion rocked the industrial district. Wu's handiwork. Thousands of swarm creatures died in an instant. The hive mind reeled from the shock. The swarm forces faltered, their coordination broken. Now screamed, "Everyone push now." The Marines advanced, not retreating, not defending, advancing, into the heart of the swarm. And the swarm, for the first time, began to pull back. The Dominion swarm retreated, stood in the ruins of, and watched the enemy ships lift from the planet's surface. They fled into space, jumping to hyperspace as fast as their drives could charge. The hive mind that had conquered 12 systems was running away from humans. Around him, Marines collapsed where they stood. Some laughed, some cried, most just sat in silence, too exhausted for anything else. They had saved 1,900,000. They had lost 5,000 human soldiers. Commander sat on a broken wall, his head in his hands. Captain stood nearby, staring at nothing. Her armor was so damaged it barely held together. Sara moved among the survivors, treating wounds. She had been awake for over 70 hours. She swayed with each step but did not stop working. Helped her carrying medical supplies. The young Marine had survived. She moved differently now, with a quiet confidence that had not been there before. Wu was making jokes again, trying to make people laugh. Most ignored him, but a few managed weak smiles. Rescue ships began landing. Coalition vessels, coming to evacuate the survivors. Civilians poured out to thank the humans, to touch them, to weep with gratitude. An old woman approached. "You are with the humans." "I am an observer," said. "Then observe this," the woman said. She pointed at a group of human Marines. "Those people saved my family. They did not have to, we are not their kind, but they fought and bled and died for us anyway." Tears ran down her face. "How do I thank someone for that?" Had no answer. 3 weeks later, stood before the Galactic Coalition Council. The chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from 40 species. They all watched him with varying degrees of interest. "Observer," the council speaker said, "you have submitted your report on human military capabilities. Please summarize your findings." Activated his presentation. Images from the battle filled the chamber, ships burning in space, Marines fighting in the streets, civilians being evacuated. "The humans call it Prime," began. "We now call it the miracle of. The question I was sent to answer was simple. What makes humans different? Why should the galaxy pay attention to this new species?" He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I expected to find superior technology. I found ships that were barely adequate. I expected to find superior tactics. I found plans that were desperate and improvised. I expected to find a warrior culture like I found soldiers who sang songs and showed each other pictures of their families." Murmurs in the chamber continued. The humans lost 40% of their fleet in the first engagement. Any other species would have retreated. The humans celebrated because they had bought enough time for their ground forces to land. He showed footage of leading her Marines through the city. They were outnumbered 50-1 on the ground. Any logical military force would have extracted as many civilians as possible and withdrawn. The humans refused to leave until every civilian was safe. More footage, holding the corridor alone. Sarah treating wounded under fire, overcoming her fear. They suffered 70% casualties among their ground forces. Their ammunition ran out. Their supplies were exhausted. They were surrounded and facing certain death, and they chose to attack. The chamber was silent now. Every representative was watching the screens. I have analyzed human biology. They are not the strongest species. They are stronger. They are not the fastest. They are faster. They are not the... Many of our species surpass them in intelligence. Pulled up data showing human evolutionary history. But humans evolved on what they call a death world. Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme climates. Most species would have died. Humans survived by developing one critical trait: they do not give up. He showed footage of on the bridge, giving orders even as his ship was being torn apart. Humans feel fear just as intensely as any species, perhaps more intensely because their brains are wired to imagine every possible danger, but they have learned to master their fear, to acknowledge it and move forward anyway. Footage of the Marines forming a circle around, supporting her through her breakdown. They form bonds with incredible speed and strength. They call it pack bonding. On their world, working together meant survival, so they evolved to form teams to care for each other, to protect their group at any cost. They extend this bonding to other species. They were strangers. The humans died for them anyway. He showed the final battle, the desperate counterattack, the swarm's retreat. The Dominion swarm has never retreated before. They have faced species with better weapons, better ships, better numbers. But they have never faced a species that fights harder when losing, a species that turns emotion into a weapon. Deactivated the screens and faced the council directly. You asked what makes humans different. I will tell you. Humans are not driven by logic or survival instinct alone. They are driven by something they call stubbornness. They decide what is right, and then they pursue it regardless of the cost. They do not calculate the odds and choose the rational path. They see the impossible and try anyway. He pulled up casualty figures. 5,000 humans died at Prime. This is unacceptable by coalition standards. We would call it a disaster. The humans call it a victory because they saved almost 2 million civilians. A council member spoke up, but such losses are unsustainable. No military can function with such casualty rates. You are correct, said, which is why humans do not plan to lose, but they will accept losses if necessary to achieve their goal, and their goal is never just survival. It is protecting others, defeating evil, doing what they believe is right. Another council member asked, "Are you saying they are irrational?" "No," replied. "I am saying they operate on a different kind of rationality. They do not weigh cost versus benefit in lives and resources. They weigh it in values and principles. Is this cause worth dying for? For humans, the answer is often yes." He showed footage of speaking to her Marines before the final push. I watched Commander face impossible odds and smile. I watched Captain lead her people into certain death, and they followed willingly. I watched a medic named Sora save lives for 3 days without sleep. I watched a young Marine named overcome her terror because others believed in her. His voice grew stronger. I watched humans march into battle, and I learned something that every species in this galaxy needs to understand. Humans are not the strongest or fastest but they are the most dangerous, because they simply do not know when to quit. He displayed a final image, the memorial service he had attended, thousands of humans and gathered to honor the fallen, and placing tokens on a memorial wall, one for each Marine who had died. Humans remember their dead. They tell stories about them, keep them alive in memory. This is how they honor sacrifice. This is how they ensure that death has meaning. Looked at each council member in turn. You ask why the galaxy should fear humans. Fear is the wrong word. The galaxy should respect them, should understand them. Because when you make an ally of humans, they will die for you. And when you make an enemy of humans, they will never, ever stop coming. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. The Dominion swarm has conquered 12 systems, continued. They have faced every major military power in this galaxy, and yet they retreated from humans, not because humans are strong, but because the swarm finally encountered something they could not comprehend, a species that fights harder when losing, that bonds with strangers, that chooses death over surrender. He closed his report. Humans are survivors who became warriors. They did not conquer their world through strength. They survived it through determination, through pack bonding, through refusing to accept defeat even when defeat was certain. Touched his side where he had been wounded, where human Marines had risked their lives to save him. I went a prime as an observer. I left as a believer. Humanity's greatest weapon is not their technology or tactics. It is their spirit, their ability to care, to hope, to fight for others even when they should run. This is what makes them unique. This is what makes them dangerous. He met the council speaker's gaze. The galaxy fears them because we recognize something we have lost or never had. The ability to look at impossible odds and say, we will try anyway. The ability to love so fiercely that we will die for strangers. The ability to hope even in the darkest moments. Powered down his recording device. Humanity is not coming to conquer the galaxy. They are coming to protect it. And if we are wise, we will welcome them. Because when the next threat emerges, when the next swarm comes, we will need people who do not know when to quit. The council speaker nodded slowly. Thank you, observer. Your report will be considered carefully. Left the chamber. Outside, he found and waiting. They had been called to receive medals from the coalition. Neither looked comfortable in their dress uniforms. How did it go? Asked. I told them the truth, said. Which is? That you are all insane, and that the galaxy is better for it. Laughed. Well, at least you're honest. They walked together through the station. Humans and aliens passed them, going about their lives. The galaxy continued turning as it always had. But something had changed. Word of Prime was spreading. The species that made the swarm retreat, the warriors who never quit. Do you think they understood? Asked. Probably not, admitted. Most species won't understand until they fight beside us. Then I hope they get the chance, said, because I believe the galaxy will need you. We'll be ready, said simply. And believed her, because he had watched humans march into battle. He had seen them face death and laugh. He had witnessed them save millions at the cost of thousands. He had learned why the galaxy fears them, and why the galaxy needs them.